පොටින් එලියා වෙළඳපොලේ අඩුම මිලකට රුපියල් 160යි.
Tonight, the devil's in the details. State Minister says that random lockdown advice keeps missing a very significant part of the smaller picture.
There are 4.5 million SME sector entrepreneurs as well as workers who are on a day-to-day basis that they carry out their commercial lives. Who is going to deal with that?
No issues. Health expert assures the public that enough vaccines are in the pipeline in the next 2 months to complete all vaccinations.
We plan to vaccinate about 30, about 18, and at some point we need to vaccinate school children also. In September we get 8 million Sinopharm, October 4 million Pfizer vaccine.
Pay up. Sri Lanka revises its visa fees and brings in new fines for tourists who overstay their welcome. An eye for an eye. As chaos still ensues outside the Kabul airport, the US military strikes back at extremist militants behind the deadly bombings, killing an ISIS planner. All that and much more coming up on First at 9, this Saturday the 28th of August 2021.
දසනකාන්තී චූර්ණය සහිත ලීවර් ආයිෂ් දන්තාලේපය දත්වල ඇති ප්‍රශ්න 10ක් වලකයි.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammika Eknaika. Now, as the debate still rages on the true cost of the lockdown, many parties representing both the government, opposition and civil society have been at loggerheads over the issue, with some calling for the country to be closed down further in order to stop a surge in COVID-19 deaths. The economic cost of doing so has come to the fore, with the World Health Organization saying that Sri Lanka may pay a $2.2 billion bill for 6 weeks of economic inactivity. Opposition members have called it a negligible loss that can be recovered in no time at all. However, today, State Minister of Money, Capital Markets and State Enterprise Reforms, Ajit Nivard Cabral, accused them of missing very vital details, such as the fate of 4.5 million workers who rely on daily work to make ends meet.
There have been quite a few opinions expressed on whether a lockdown is good for the country or not. On one hand, health experts and members of the opposition have been calling for an extended closure of the country at the cost of significant economic losses that they say can be recouped in no time at all.
I would think that this $2.2 billion can be quickly brought back into production once the lockdown is removed. Now, even when the economy contracted by about 16% the second quarter of 2020, nothing really happened to agriculture and there was a certain drop in manufacturing and services. So therefore, the economy always bounces back.
However, State Minister of Money, Capital Markets and State Enterprise Reforms, Ajit Nivard Cabral, says that such analyses are a bit too myopic for his liking. Speaking to First at 9 this evening, the State Minister said that there is a micro angle that seems to be missed in this equation, namely 4.5 million people in the SME and informal sector who depend on being able to operate on a day-to-day basis to make their ends meet.
See, one of the problems that some of these analysts have is that they look at this issue only from a macro angle. But at the same time, what they all miss is that there is a micro angle to this situation as well. There are 4.5 million SME sector entrepreneurs as well as workers who are on a day-to-day basis that they carry out their commercial lives. Now, who is going to deal with that? $2.2 billion in the context of an $80 billion economy may appear to be not very high. They can also argue that it can be recovered. Yes, there is some degree of truth in that. But what is important is that we got to recognize this micro dimension as well. You have to be concerned about peoples. The same way that we are concerned about the lives of people, we have to be concerned about the livelihood of people as well. Now, this part of the equation also must be seen in a sensitive manner. That is why I have been advocating continuously that we should take the health protocols into serious consideration. We should take all those requirements into serious consideration, act accordingly, but at the same time, do not close down the economy.
The State Minister also says that the government is not willing to forget the existence of these 4.5 million Sri Lankans who may have to pay a much harder and more long-term cost of any prolonged restrictions. With most essential sectors currently braving the risk of infection and continuing to work, he says that it would be unfair to exclude this sector from engaging in commercial activity.
Just imagine now, with all these difficulties, the people in the power sector are working, the garbage collectors are working, the health services are working, the telephone systems are working, the other essential services are working, the distribution network is working. Now, if you really take this argument to its natural conclusion, then nobody should work, because then everybody is at risk. So that's why I say those who are working today are also working with risk. They have a certain obligation to protect themselves. But at the same time, they must also be provided with the wherewithal to do the work. Tomorrow, if the police don't work and the customs don't work and the port doesn't work and the army doesn't work, what will be the plight? So there are thousands and thousands of people who are already working. So why should we only stop those 4.5 million people from earning a living?
Meanwhile, former Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe continues to urge the government to reach out to the International Monetary Fund in order to stave off any further depletion of foreign reserves.
The real question is not the loss from a close down or loss from not closing down. The issue is there's going to be losses. All countries have recognized that. And we have to go to the IMF and get money to withstand it. Maybe we may have to negotiate for about 2 to 3 billion, but it can be done. We must go and start negotiating. So we sort of go away from the main issue, which is the need for foreign exchange reserves, and then look at the question of lockdown. Even if you have a lockdown, you can exempt certain areas, certain sectors, but we have to address our overall economic strategy.
However, responding to this suggestion, State Minister Cabral says that such advice is easier said than done, as the conditionalities that accompany such assistance may not be in line with what the people expect from the government. The government, he says, is on the right track, which the people will see for themselves in the long run.
The way he would have gone through would have been to go to the IMF, and then IMF would have imposed certain conditions. I think he knows that as well, because he knows what IMF would probably ask at this time, to cut the public service, to ensure that the interest rates are made much higher than what it is today, to depreciate the currency. Those would be probably prerequisites that the IMF would prescribe. Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe may be comfortable with that, but I don't think the large population of our country would be comfortable with that kind of a situation. It's not going to be as easy as going to the IMF and saying, hey, we'll come and do whatever you say, and therefore you give us a little money. That was what Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe did, and I think he continues to see that as the only option. That is the problem that he is having. So while I don't have any concern or disagreement with regard to the need to bring in new funds into the country, it's only the methodology that we have a difference of opinion. He has one opinion, we have another, and I think what we are doing will be in the best interest of the country in the long term.
Now, as the Sri Lankan health authorities near the completion of vaccinating Sri Lanka's population of over 30s, Chairman of the State Pharmaceutical Corporation says that the overall target population for the jab is 17.5 million people. That figure also includes the under 18s as well. To achieve this goal, 12 million Sinopharm and Pfizer vaccine doses are expected in the country over the next 2 months. As the country struggles with worsening COVID spread, health experts remind the people that it wasn't the vaccine which saved China from mega spread, but individual discipline.
As promised earlier this week, 2 million doses of the Sinopharm vaccine reached Sri Lanka today. A flight carrying 2.3 million doses of the jab landed in the island this morning, with 300,000 of it being a donation from the People's Liberation Army of China to Sri Lanka's armed forces.
මෙතනදී අපේ ආරක්ෂක හමුදාවල සමාජකයින්ටත් ඔවුන්ගේ පවුල්වල ළඟම ඥාතීන්ටත් ඒ වගේම විශ්‍රාම ගිය සෙබළුන්ට සහ ඔවුන්ගේ පවුල්වල අයටත් මේ එන්නත ලබාගෙන නොමැති අයට මේ එන්නත ලබා දෙන්න අපි කල්පනා කරනවා. ඒ වගේම දැනට ආරක්ෂක හමුදා සමාජිකයින් විශාල සංඛ්‍යාවක් එන්නත්කරණය කරලා තියෙන නිසා අපිට පුළුවන් වෙයි මේ එන්නතෙන් කොටසක් අපේ රටේ සාමාන්‍ය ජනතාවටත් ලබා දෙන්න.
I think the donation of 300,000 doses of Sinopharm vaccines is an important part of the effort for us to support the Sri Lankan people, especially the Sri Lanka Armed Forces, to fight against this COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm sure today we are gathering here to show the solidarity, and we are together through these hard times, and I'm sure we will win this battle. And Sri Lankan people and Chinese people, we've been enjoying long-standing relationship together, and this relationship is growing stronger through these difficult times. I can guarantee you, whatever is beneficial for the Sri Lankan people, China and Chinese people and Chinese armed forces will not hesitate to do anything which is good for you. So we are together, all in this. Let's work together for the health and for the good future for us all.
The balance of 2 million doses is part of a purchase order made by the State Pharmaceuticals Corporation. State Minister of Production, Supply and Regulation of Pharmaceuticals, Professor Chandajay Sumana, stated that this consignment raises the total number of Sinopharm vaccines received by the island to 18 million. What's more, there was another vaccine arrival this morning. 100,000 doses of the Pfizer vaccine also reached the island. The batch is a donation from the United States via the World Health Organization's COVAX facility. Releasing a statement, the US Embassy in Colombo said that these vaccines will help save lives and increase the COVID-19 vaccine coverage in Sri Lanka, essential to ending the pandemic. As of last evening, there had been 12,290,482 partial immunizations in Sri Lanka. From that figure, 6,873,138 people had been fully immunized, meaning just over 50% of people to have been given the first dose are now completely covered. Though a lockdown is in effect, the pace of the vaccination has not dropped. 327,114 people were given the jab yesterday. It includes 33,571 administrations of the first dose and 293,543 second dose administrations. The government's target vaccination group continues to be the over 30s in the country. Though over 12 million people have received the first dose so far, the figure also includes some between 18 and 30 years of age, as persons in specific sectors such as essential services, the Triforces and health sector were given the jab. So on paper, all the people above the age of 30 in the island are at least partially vaccinated. However, there remain some who have delayed opting for the jab over various reasons. But the vaccination can't stop at over 30s, and the health authorities are focused on rolling the jab out to even those under the age of 18. And for that, Sri Lanka need many more doses of the precious vaccine.
We plan to vaccinate initially about 30, then about 18, and our immunization program has decided at some point we need to vaccinate school children also. So in that context, we know that we have to vaccinate about 17.5 million population in Sri Lanka, and for that we need about 35.5 million vaccinations as double doses. And so far we have got here in Sri Lanka about 22 million vaccines, and we need another 13 million doses to complete our vaccination, and that is in the pipeline. In the month of September, we get another 8 million vaccines Sinopharm, and in October, we are getting 4 million doses of Pfizer vaccine, and with that, we can complete the total vaccination program without any problem. So the important fact that we need to consider at this point is, even though we vaccinate, the total immunization of the population comes at least 2 weeks after completion of the second dose. During this period, we know that everybody in this country, especially the people who have long-term comorbidities, does not have the complete immunization or complete ability to cope with the virus. Therefore, we need to go very slow during this period, avoiding crowded places. Be careful when you are associating with people so that you could get this illness until we get the full immunization and ability to cope with the virus. So it will take at least another 2 to 3 weeks. We are thinking about early October. So until early October, our population, even though we have vaccinated, are slightly vulnerable to these new variants.
Whatever said and done, the purpose of any vaccine is to raise an individual's immune response to the virus and reduce incidence of severe disease and death. But some countries which were quick to inoculate their people are now seeing a surge in the virus spread. Israel is one of them.
මේ වගේ ඉතාමත්ම ගැටලුකාරී තැන් මේ වසංගතය සම්බන්ධව පැතිරෙනවා විශේෂයෙන්ම ඊශ්‍රායලය කියන රටේ මුලින්මම එන්නත දීලා රෝගය ඉතාමත්ම ඉක්මනින් පාලනය කළා ආයමක්කත් රට විවෘත කළා රටේ ජනතාවට මාස් හැඳීමත් අනවශ්‍යයි කිව්ව රටක් නමුත් වැඩියෙන්ම බලපෑම් ඇති කරන්න පුළුවන් එන්නත කියන ෆයිසර් එන්නත තමයි ඒගොල්ලෝ දුන්නේ එහෙම කරලා දැන් මේ වෙනකොට ආයමක්කත් රටේ මේ රෝගය වේගයෙන් පැතිර යමින් පවතිනවා ඒ රටේ මේ රෝගය පැතිර යාම පැවැත්වීමට හේතු කාරණා බොහෝමයක්ම සඳහන් කරනවා. ප්‍රධානම හේතුව ෆයිසර් එන්නතේ ක්‍රියාකාරීත්වයේ මන්ද වීම මාස 6ක් විතර යනකොට මේ සෑම එන්නතකම ක්‍රියාකාරීත්වය අඩු වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඉතින් ඒ වගේම ෆයිසර් එන්නතත් ක්‍රියාකාරීත්වය අඩු වෙන එක එකක්. ඒ එක්කම සෑහෙන ප්‍රමාණයක් දරුවන් මේ එන්නතට ගණන් නොගත්තා වුණාට දරුවන් රෝගය පතුරනවා. ඉතින් එතකොට ඒ දරුවන් අතර රෝගය තිබීම ඒ වගේම මේ ඩෙල්ටා ප්‍රභේදය ඒ රටට පැමිණීම. මොකද ඒගොල්ලන්ට මුලින්ම තිබුණේ ඩෙල්ටා ප්‍රභේදය නෙමෙයි. දැන් ඇවිල්ලා තියෙන්නේ ඩෙල්ටා ප්‍රභේදය. ඒ වගේම ප්‍රීමැචුවලි මුව ආවරණ ඉවත් කිරීමට රජය තීරණය කිරීම. කියන මේ වගේ බොහෝ කරුණු කාරණා මේකට හේතු වෙනවා ඒ රටවල පාලනය වැළැක්වීමට. අපි දැනුවත් වෙන්න ඕන චීනය මුල අවස්ථාවේදී මේ රෝගය පාලනය කළේ එන්නතෙන් නෙමෙයි නමුත් සෞඛ්‍ය ක්‍රමවලින් මුව ආවරණ පැළඳීම සහ දුරස්ථභාවය තබා ගැනීම කියන එක.
What this makes evident is that adherence to the health and safety guidelines is of paramount importance, even if a person is completely vaccinated. As a country, that's the only way to get out of this.
Now, Sri Lanka's COVID-19 death toll reached new unfortunate heights yesterday, with 214 deaths confirmed within a day, which means that about 9 deaths are taking place every hour. As such, during this dire time of need, health experts are urging the public to be mindful that there are some nefarious individuals waiting to exploit people for monetary gains during hospital admission procedures.
Officials first confirmed the presence of the Delta variant of COVID-19 in the country on the 17th of June. Since then, its spread has been nothing but rampant and leads to believe that it may well have been there in the community much before that. That said, this is very much a hypothesis as health experts say that gene sequencing every case is unnecessary as the virus spreads just the same despite the variant. But the gene sequencing conducted by the University of Sri Jayawardhanapura on random samples collected from a sample group have yielded 292 Delta variant infections. What this indicates is that there is a number of Delta variant cases in the sample group has increased, leading to the conclusion that the similar widespread of the variant is in the community. In any case, the daily caseloads and deaths continue to rise. Yesterday, the death toll was 214. That's almost 9 deaths per hour. Most of the people to perish are above the age of 60 and those suffering from underlying health conditions. From yesterday's 214 deaths, 151 had been 60 years of age or above.
අපි දැනුම හැටියට අවසානයේ කරපු සංගණනවලට අනුවට මේ බොහෝ මරණ සිද්ධ වුණේ එන්නත නොගත් අය එහෙම නැත්නම් එන්නත භාගයක් පමණක් ගත් අය. අපි දන්නවා ලෝකයේ බොහෝ රටවල් වල මේ එන්නත මගින් රෝගය සෑහෙන දුරට පාලනය කළා. එන්නත මගින් රෝගීන් අසාධ්‍ය වීමත් ජීවිතක්ෂයට පත්වීමත් වළක්වනවා කියන එකට අපිට සෑහෙන දත්ත තියෙනවා. ඉතින් ඒක නිසා අපි රෝගය වැළඳීම වැළැක්වීම කියන එකට වඩා මේ අවස්ථාවේදී වැඩිවෙන්ම අවධානය යොමු කරන්නේ ජීවිත නැතිවීම සහ අසාධ්‍ය වීම වැළැක්වීම කියන කරුණ මතයි.
In the third wave alone, which began following the end of the Sinhala and Tamil New Year festivities from a staggering total of 326,812 infections, 7,762 fatalities have taken place. That translates to 2.37% of deaths from the total infections in the third wave. The situation is undoubtedly serious. But health experts are now warning that there might be people ready to pounce on unsuspecting people in this desperate situation.
මේ අවස්ථාවේ අයුතු ප්‍රයෝජන ගන්න අය බොහෝ වෙලාවට ඉන්නවා. උදාහරණයක් විදිහට රෝහල් වලට ඇතුල් වීමට මුදල් ගැනීම, ඇම්බියුලන්ස් වලට මුදල් ගැනීම, බලා ගන්න මුදල් ගැනීම කියන වගේ මේ වගේ රජයේ රෝහල් වල නොමිලේ සේවා සපයන ස්ථානවලත් මේ වගේ කටයුතු සිද්ධ වෙනවා. ඉතින් ඒකින්ද ජනතාව දැනුවත් වෙන්න ඕන මේ පිළිවෙලට තියෙන ක්‍රියාදාමය හරියාකාරව ආකාරයට භාවිතා කළා මේ ආර්ථික අපහසුතා තියෙන අවස්ථාවේ කොහොමද වැඩිම සේවයක් ලබා ගන්න කියන එක.
In other developments, the country's overall number of COVID patients to have recovered from the virus rose to 355,394 today, after 2,203 patients were confirmed to have recovered from the virus.
Big 3.
Now, the Sri Lanka Bureau for Foreign Employment announced today that a new portal has been established to register migrant workers for vaccinations. As such, all traveller hopefuls will now be able to register for the programme through the portal on the Bureau's website.
The Sri Lankan Bureau of Foreign Employment announced today that a new portal has been established to pre-register migrant workers for the COVID-19 vaccine programme. The page COVID-19 Vaccine for Migrant Workers can be accessed through the official website www.slbfe.lk. Those who wish to leave the country for employment overseas have to register themselves for vaccination through the SLBFE website and obtain a reference number. The Bureau also stated that expatriates who are visiting on vacation are eligible to receive the vaccines under this initiative as well. Migrant workers who have secured employment abroad through private channels too will be required to submit their personal details through the Sri Lanka Bureau of Foreign Employment and get registered.
The Department of Immigration and Immigration meanwhile announced today that visa fees and fines have been revised as per the new Immigration and Immigration regulations issued on the 18th of August.
In a media communique, the Department of Immigration and Immigration said today that foreigners staying in Sri Lanka without a valid visa will be charged a $500 penalty in addition to the visa fee. Meanwhile, a visa fee of $200 will be charged from investors, employees, students, healthcare recipients, representatives of non-governmental institutions, religious workers, as well as the spouses and dependent children for resident visa. Any person whose Sri Lankan citizenship has been seized after sections 19, 20 or 21 of the Citizenship Act and the spouses as well as dependent children of such persons will be charged $100 for resident visa. In addition, the residence visa has been set at $100 for persons in certain other categories as well. Any person who has been registered as an Indian citizen under Section 13 of the Indo-Ceylon Agreement and his/her spouse and dependent children will be subjected to the $100 residence visa fee. Non-Sri Lankan spouse of a demised Sri Lankan who has not remarried with the approval of the employment also comes under the $100 residence visa fee. Non-Sri Lankan spouse of a Sri Lankan citizen who is living in Sri Lanka continuously for not less than 10 years with the approval of employment will also be charged $100 for residence visa. Non-Sri Lankan spouse of a Sri Lankan citizen who has children below the age of 18 years with the approval of employment also comes under the move. Meanwhile, the residence visa for the clergy and foreign national who is remarried to Sri Lankan citizen and the dependent children of the non-Sri Lankan spouse will be free. Tourists from the SAARC countries can obtain a 30-day visa via the online process for $20 and this fee for the tourists from other countries will be $35. Subsequently, the tourists can extend their visa after 30 days up to 90 days and also up to 180 days and 270 days. For more information, visit www.AdaDerana.lk.
Now, it has been confirmed moments ago that 212 COVID-related deaths have been confirmed yesterday. Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, oil prices rose more than 2% yesterday and were on track for their biggest weekly gains in over a year as energy firms began shutting production in the U.S. Gulf of Mexico ahead of a major hurricane expected to hit early next week. Brent futures rose $1.56 to $72.63 a barrel by 15:51 GMT, while US West Texas Intermediate crude rose $1.48 to $68.90. That puts Brent on track for its highest close since the 2nd of August and WTI on track for its highest close since the 12th of August. For the week, both benchmarks were up about 11%, which would be their biggest weekly percentage gain since June 2020. The US military said today that it believes it has killed a planner for the Afghan branch of the Islamic State group in a drone strike in the east of the country. After the deadly attack outside the Kabul airport on Thursday, US President Joe Biden vowed to hunt down those responsible for the deaths, which included 13 US troops. In any case, the Taliban now looks to be blocking people from going to the Kabul airport, with the US saying that the Taliban wants to have a functioning commercial airport.
A day after deadly attacks outside the Kabul airport in Afghanistan, Taliban members were seen blocking the road leading to the gates of the airport and directing the traffic away. The United States says that the Islamist Taliban movement had indicated in no certain terms that it wants to have a functioning commercial airport to avoid international isolation. Yesterday, the Pentagon said that several nations were willing to work with the Taliban to keep Kabul airport operating. Still, as aid groups struggle to keep supply routes into the country open after the 31st of August departure of foreign troops, Afghans trying to leave the country are finding the few remaining exits slamming shut. In the meantime, the Pentagon insists that the Taliban are not in charge of any part of the military section of Kabul airport or its gates, which it says remain under US military control.
Firstly, have the Taliban entered or taken control of any parts of the military section of HKIA that you're aware of?
The Taliban are not in control of any part of Hamid Karzai International Airport. I saw that report too, it's false.
Including any of the gates?
They are not in charge of any of the gates, are not in charge of any of the airport operations. That is still under US military control.
The Pentagon also said yesterday that the deadly attack on Thursday, which killed 13 US troops and at least 79 Afghans, was carried out by a single suicide bomber at a gate to the Kabul airport, and there was no second explosion at a nearby hotel. The Islamic State's Afghan affiliate ISIS Khorasan is said to be responsible for the attack.
I can confirm for you that we do not believe that there was a second explosion at or near the Baron Hotel, that it was one suicide bomber. I can also report that 2 flights landed at Ramstein today carrying our wounded personnel from the attack.
We still believe there are credible threats. In fact, I'd say specific credible threats. And we want to make sure we're prepared for those. And I don't think, and I'm sure you can understand, that just by virtue of the fact that that we may be taking other steps doesn't mean that they would have necessarily been the proper steps for what we saw yesterday. We have additional information, and so what I would tell you is what you're seeing us act on, to the degree we can talk about it, is based on information that we have. And I think I'd leave it at that. We, again, without talking to intelligence, we're monitoring these threats very, very specifically, virtually in real time. And I think you can understand I wouldn't get in more detail than that.
Following the blast on Thursday, the US vowed retribution.
To those who carried out this attack, as well as anyone who wishes America harm, know this: we will not forgive. We will not forget. We will hunt you down and make you pay. I will defend our interests and our people with every measure at my command.
Today, the US military said that it believes to have killed the planner for the Afghan branch of the Islamic State group in a drone strike in the east of the country. The suspected member of the ISK group was targeted in Nangarhar province. The US drone strike is the first reported in Afghanistan since Thursday's blast.
And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.